Welcome to By the Books, the podcast helping business owners navigate the complex world of business, tax, and bookkeeping. Now, to the owner and president of Kline, Lindsay Kline.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. This is Lindsay Kline, your host of By the Books and owner of Kline, honest, accurate bookkeeping performed on time. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I have with me Kris, producer extraordinaire at Frito Nation Productions. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You know, I love being on your podcast because the way you intro me always makes me feel so good.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and thanks for having me, Lindsay.
So you actually came up with this topic today.
So this is where this idea kind of came from. So I'm thinking about when you are out speaking or telling other people about your business, what is the best way to get people to learn more about you, learn more about your business? And I think the one word that continues to pop up in my mind when I think about this is engaging. Are you engaging when you're telling people?
Right.
And so the reason I thought about this was we do our as part of the Allen Fairview Chamber of Commerce, we have a Tuesday morning networking meeting. And
that is very specific.
Yes, it is.
And I hope you don't say anything bad about them now.
I will
because
not.
They will.
I have nothing bad to say about them at all. But Lindsay, you've been to the meetings. Frito and I are there at the meetings, and they have the opportunity where you can. Everybody gets to do a 30-second commercial, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But you can do a 10-minute presentation.
Yes.
And so Frito and I were going to present for Frito Nation Productions recently, and we began thinking, how are we going to do our presentation? Now, Frito had a PowerPoint that he had used previously, and what I wanted to get into was some of the statistics about how people are more familiar with podcasting than ever. What the numbers look like in podcasting now versus 2006 when this was kind of getting started.
Right.
And even the percentage of people who listen to podcasts now versus, 5 years ago. And so I started thinking, man, even one slide of presenting percentages and numbers. And I'm like,
you're falling asleep thinking about it.
We're scaring people out the door with just that. And so we thought of a really interesting and a fun way, we think, was where we played like an interactive game where we got people on their phones answering questions. And we had people coming up to us after and they were saying, hey, that was really fun. Thanks for the presentation. And we had multiple people come up to us, inquiring, hey, I'd love to come in and talk about podcasting. And so I say all of that to say is I think we have got to find a engaging way to present your business because, Lindsay, we have all been to those meetings where people, all they do, they click through the PowerPoint, click, start to finish, and there's nothing else. And I think
it's even worse if they're just reading directly from the slide.
Yes. And if there's like multiple sentences versus PowerPoint slide. Nobody wants to sit there and read PowerPoints.
No.
So we've become ingrained. I think we just kind of use PowerPoint as a crutch.
Yes.
And we're like, this is the way I'm going to do it.
Absolutely.
And so what my recommendation would be is, hey, don't get me wrong. I think PowerPoint has its place.
Yeah.
And it can be very useful in presentations. But don't say my presentation is a PowerPoint. You got to find a way to get creative.
Yes.
Whether you're going to do some sort of audience participation. One thing that I thought was really great was, I think back to someone who presented at the chamber a couple of months ago. It was Steve Stump, a guy you've had on your podcast. And he came in and he taught some very practical things. And he had giveaways to do audience participation. And so when I think back on previous presentations, I continue to think back to his because of the way that he was.
So I wasn't there that week. What was it he did that really appealed to you and stuck with you?
So the first thing was audience participation, because I think it's so easy when you get into these 3-4 minutes in, people get drawn to their phones, they kind of tune out. And then when you say, all right, let me see a show of hands or do this, do that. And I've got a $15 gift card to hand out. All of a sudden, that brings everybody back in.
Yes.
Even the people that you had lost before. And I can't remember exactly what he had them do, but he said, okay, we've got 2 giveaways, first person to do this gets this, then the next person gets this. And it was a real easy way to kind of bring people back in and get them.
I like that.
Get them involved. And the other thing he did, and I know we've talked about this is what you do, Lindsay, is teach people something.
Yes.
Like there's nothing worse than leaving one of these presentations and you say, I was bored the whole time. I got nothing out of it. I got nothing out of it. And when you can leave and you can say, hey, Lindsay taught me how to do this, and now I do this in my business every week. Guess what? Now they're thinking of Lindsay Kline. They're thinking of Kline. So it's just about, and it's going to take some work, you know? It's not as easy as, hey, I'm going to type some things out on a PowerPoint and we're good to go. We've got to find a way to get creative when presenting our business and telling other people about our business.
I agree. And that's the easy thing to do, right? Copy and paste some facts and figures and paste them into a PowerPoint. And you really don't have to remember anything, right? Because you can just read it.
Yep.
So that's definitely the easiest way to do a presentation, but not the most effective. I do like doing PowerPoints when I have the opportunity.
Yes.
I opt to do them rather than not, but I don't like wordy presentations at all. Those are like kryptonite to your presentation. Like if you're working on a PowerPoint, do not do wordy. Get as few words on there as possible. In fact, I'm a really big fan of some kind of image and like 1 or 2 words. Something that'll kind of help trigger me on what the next topic is or the next point is, but something that is just kind of eye-catching, but not wordy.
Yeah. Almost like an outline where you can get the point across.
Yes.
The audience will understand what you're going to talk about. And maybe it's a key point that you mentioned for them to write down or something. But if every word you're saying is in the PowerPoint, again, I think that's just continuing to drive people away.
Yes.
And then at that point, what was the point in doing the presentation in the first place?
Right. You're actually probably hindering yourself more than you're helping.
Yeah.
And if you need for some reason to get all that information in there, do more slides.
Yeah.
Instead of having one slide with 15 paragraphs on it.
Yeah.
Just opt to do lots of different slides with just a few words on it.
Yeah.
So, but less is more. When it comes to PowerPoint, less is more.
Yes.
And stories. I don't think people realize, even if you find those facts and figures and statistics interesting, most people are zoned out.
Yeah.
They're thinking about what they're having for lunch or, what they have going on in their business, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But when you start talking, telling a story, people are back in. They're engaged again. So that is one thing that I try to do. Whatever point I'm trying to make, I try to bring in a story. In fact, there was this one time, I don't have a story for that, but there's always things you can bring in, whether it's kind of appealing to the fear, like this worst case scenario that you heard happen or had a personal experience with, or something funny. Funny always appeals, right? Yep. If you can think of a funny story to go along with it. Even in my 30-second commercials that we oftentimes do in the networking settings, I'm trying to think of some story that I can, summarize, and it's got to be 10 to 15 seconds long, right?
Yeah.
But that can hit home the point, explain in some way how my service can help them. In my case, it's bookkeeping services. So how does that story tell them that they need to come talk to me? One story that really I use for this a lot, it kind of speaks to the fear emotion. It's when I talk about how you need to make sure that your bookkeeping company is keeping your data, your information safe. And a lot of people don't think about that, like where their data goes.
Yeah.
So the story, which I'll tell the long version instead of the 15-second version, but I had a bookkeeping client that was a towing company, and they would tow repossessed cars into their lot. And so they had, I think even by law, there's a time frame where the person that owned the car, well, the bank, I guess, owns the car, but the person that was driving the car, they had their personal belongings in it when it got repossessed. They have a certain time frame to come pick their belongings up. So this towing company, they got so much stuff accumulated. They got to the point where they were just dumping it in the dumpster if people didn't come pick it up. Which, you know, I came to do bookkeeping services for them, and I saw all this stuff getting thrown away, and it was like sickening. And so I made a deal with the owner. I said, would you let me take that stuff and just have a big sale, and I'll give you a cut? You know, it's like, this is sickening. This is stuff people could use, you know? So we made the deal. My brother and I we filled up a van, I don't know how many times, and took it to my parents' house and had a huge sale. So in this dumpster of stuff that they had pulled from people's cars, there apparently was a tax preparer that got his car repossessed. And he had a bunch of tax returns in his car that, of course, somebody that had worked at the towing company had pulled out of the car. They had stored in their facility for a while and then eventually threw it in the dumpster, which ended up at my house. Okay. And this is people's tax returns, their personal financial information, their social security number, their address, kids' names, kids' socials.
Goodness gracious,
and I'm looking at a stack of these. So this is the kind of thing that people don't think about whenever they're hiring a tax professional or hiring a bookkeeper. What are those people doing with their information? And so this is one of the stories that I can pull from for that 30-second commercial, just kind of summarize that story in 10 seconds and explain the importance of making sure your bookkeeper is keeping your data safe, right? So that's something that you keep someone's attention.
Yep.
You appeal to their fear. You explain why you're a step above other people that maybe not keeping your information is safe. That's the kind of thing that I think to kind of pull from is those stories. Find a good story to hit home the point.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
No, I agree 100%. And that makes that connection even stronger. I'll tell you what I think is the most effective thing you can do in a 30-second commercial. And I'll tell you that in just a couple minutes. That's what we call a radio tease, Lindsay. That's my radio background coming out here. But the reason I'm doing it later is because I have a story to tell you.
Nice.
And it comes with some advice. And the advice I would say is know your audience before you do your 30 seconds.
Okay, I know what you're about to say. We got to give the backstory though, because some listeners may have not heard the episode that we talked about this.
So this is all it's a funny story that I want to share, but I think we can put some practicality behind it. So we had our podcast a couple months ago, and that's when we were talking about, the scarcity versus the abundant mindset.
Yes.
And Lindsay, you were at a networking group.
Yes.
And you had mentioned that you were giving a presentation at a different networking group.
Yes.
Now, you were not promoting the other networking group.
No, I was promoting my showcase where I would be speaking at that, but I mentioned by name another networking group. So I told the story in that episode, the scarcity versus abundant mindset. I tell the story. I didn't name any names, did not name any names, but I tell the story about how I was basically scolded from the networking group president. I was scolded by him for mentioning another networking group's name. Yeah. So in that, I tell the story about how I decided this group did not align with what I considered to be an abundancy mindset, and I chose no longer to attend. Yeah. But you and Frito still occasionally stop by there.
Yeah. So we've got some good contacts that are there. I don't mind the lunch. I think the lunch is actually pretty good. But we ended up there, and Lindsay, when I got there, totally forgot about everything that happened. And I'll tell you why. Because whenever I'm on the spot to do my 30-second commercials, to do my pitch, I just lose it. I freak out because...
Which is interesting to me because you seem so like polished and on top of it. I would never think that you would have anxiety going into something like that.
And I do. And it's like, if I'm doing it, I can have a car ride on the way where I think of something. But then I get there and we sit down and I go, oh my gosh, I forgot we were doing this. And so I'll tell you what I did. We had just finished recording with you and we go, oh, I'm going to talk about Lindsay because Lindsay's amazing.
And this is the group that doesn't like me very much at this point.
But, I go big brain fart a little bit and I'm not thinking about it. And I go, and I'm starting to talk and I say, everybody, I think everybody should have a podcast for their business. And I said, and here's a good person or a good reason is I said, we just got done recording with a bookkeeper. And, and I'm like, I never would have thought about podcast for a bookkeeper before, but
did you actually say my name or
did just not say your name?
But everyone knew.
But I said a bookkeeper and I said, and she is awesome at this. I said, she stepped in day one. She was like a podcast pro. And I said, you can just tell from the way she presents herself, the way she's engaging in her podcast that the audience is starting to build relationships. And so I said this to this group, again, not thinking about it. I look over at Frito. He's laughing. Still don't make the connection. Everybody is really weird around me. Still don't make the connection. And then we're walking out the door and Frito goes, dude, you need to know your audience. And again, still doesn't click. And he goes, you talked about Lindsay. And then it all comes rushing back. And I go, oh my gosh. I was like, I am so embarrassed. I said, I can never show my face at this group again. And so I will say all of that to say is know your audience. Know you're speaking to.
Are you saying you didn't earn any brownie points with that group associating yourself with me?
No, I didn't. And I just want to be out there and I want to be clear that I do not mind associating myself with Lindsay at all.
But not in that setting.
But should I have maybe come up with a different 30-second pitch? Yeah, maybe. But, in that, did I don't know if I really upset. I don't know. The only person I heard from was Frito, and I don't know if he talked to anybody. And so it's like when you do that, do you scare people away? Do you, in anything that you say that upsets people, maybe upsets a networking group? I mean, are you pushing business away long term?
You never know. Yeah. I mean, it was memorable, right?
Yes.
So maybe it somehow resonated, even though it was in a negative context. Maybe it's still.
I bet I will go down in the history books in their networking group.
No, I will go down.
Yes, you will. And now I'm a footnote as part of Lindsay's. as part of your story. But I say all that to say, know your audience, know who you're speaking to. And obviously it depends where you are. If you're at the networking event for the first time, I'm not going to say, don't do your 30 seconds until you know who you're talking to. But, maybe put a little more effort into it beforehand. So there's my story. And I hope everybody enjoyed that. Because for me, it was a pretty cringy experience. Like when I realized everything that happened. And yeah, I was telling you earlier, like as soon as I left, I got in the car and I called my wife and I was like, oh my gosh, you are not going to believe what I just did. Like I spent all day thinking about it. It just absolutely wrecked me. And that's what you get when you don't prepare. Like when you just show up and you just try to do it. That's what happens. But
I will say this, nothing extremely horrible happened with that group. But I just think because I'm one of those that can't just quietly walk away, I got to make my dissent known.
Yeah. And I've now publicly attached myself to the Lindsay Kline grenade in this group, and there's no detaching. I've exploded with you. So
you know what? I'm all good with that.
Yeah.
You're in the cool kids group now.
Yes.
So congratulations.
We're here. We're here. And it made a great story for the podcast.
Yes,
so I hope
there you go.
I hope it was worth it. Do you want to know what I think is the best thing you can do in a 30-second commercial? Because there was probably the worst thing you could do right there.
That's not the worst, actually.
Okay.
Honestly, worse would be boring, where they just don't remember what you said at all.
That is true. You know,
I think that's worse.
They get to the end and they say, man, I have no idea who Kris is, what his business is. And there are people like that.
Yeah.
In every 30-second group. And I think that a lot of it is not being fresh with what you say. When you say the same things over and over, it becomes too repetitive. You know what the other person's going to say. And at some point you go, man, I don't even know what that person does. They just get up and they talk.
Exactly.
So yes, that is bad. What I think is the best thing you can do is have a catchphrase or a rhyme, like at the end, something that is memorable. Kline, honest, accurate bookkeeping performed on time. For me, very easy to remember. You know, in some of the networking groups we go to, some of the more memorable ones, you know, there's a roofer. At the end, they say, hail happens. An insurance agent, do you dare to compare? It's just something that's easy to remember. And again, like, I hear these only once a week, and it's for 2 seconds, but I remember them.
Yeah.
And I remember who it's attached to.
Yeah.
And so I think if you can close with something catchy and memorable, that's how you're really going to stick in people's minds.
We actually had this conversation come up at the evil networking group that I mentioned at the other group. So at one of our weekly meetings, we were talking about your tagline, you know, that you give in your 30-second pitch. And so we had kind of broken up into small groups. And the group I was in, we were helping each other kind of come up with catchy phrases. And just on the fly, we came up for one, there was a CPA at the table. And on the fly, as a group, we helped them come up with one. And I think it's really good when you can put your name in there, because not only are they remembering what you do, but they remember your name.
Yes.
And his name was Kent. And so we were kind of playing around with what could we do to like throw the IRS in there, or, you know, something like that. So finally his new tagline was, does the IRS have you bent? Call Kent.
Yes.
So I thought that was really clever.
Yeah.
And we came up with that in like 5 minutes.
Yes.
So it's a really cool way to just get people to put with the face your name and what you do.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yes. Yeah. Me too. And like I said, it's an easy way for people to attach something catchy to you.
Yeah.
You know, I think of like those catchy songs, even the ones you hate, they get stuck in your head.
Yes, but you remember.
You can't forget them.
Oh, I have an example of this.
Okay.
I don't even think they have this commercial playing anymore, but Kia, you know, the big rats that I don't even know if they use these in their marketing. Do you remember this?
Weren't they?
Like,
I think they were hamsters. Were they hamsters?
Hamsters or rats or rodents of some kind, right?
Yes.
Like, ew, first of all. Just ew. But they were using this in their marketing, right? And these rats would be like in their cars, you know, like jamming around town. Yes. It's like, what?
Right.
And every time those would come on, I'm like, hate these commercials with a passion, but I still remember them as much as I hate them. Do I remember any other commercials that were playing at that time? No, but I remember the rodents.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of I think we see that formula, you know, with a lot of the Super Bowl advertisements. Yeah. It's what can we do that's going to be maybe a little weird, but memorable. And it's going to stick. It's going to stick with people. You know, one thing you said that I just realized is so important is attaching your name to your catchphrase. Because you can memorize the catchphrase. If your name's not part of it, all you may remember is the catchphrase. Yeah. And this is what I say is I think one of the biggest fails in television commercials is if I can remember what's in your commercial, but I can't remember the company it's for.
Exactly.
You know, there's one I'm thinking of right now. It's where the lady comes in and she's talking to all the different personalities of herself. And she's like, you know, it's sad me, happy me, optimistic me. And at the end they go, me. And so I can hear that in my head.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what the business is. Like what the company is, right?
You know where they do that well? Jake from State Farm.
Yes.
And I feel sorry for anyone that has the name Jake, right? Because inevitably, and I'm so sorry, Jake's out there everywhere, because you always are getting, it's Jake from State Farm.
And it's funny. We've turned like the company name into a joke.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think think about this. How do we add this to our 30 seconds? How do we add this to our catchphrase?
Yeah.
Something like that can make you memorable. I think the things we've touched on today, it can all be driven back to being engaging and being memorable. You know, give a presentation that people are going to remember, tell that funny story. And then in 3 months, they're going to see you, Lindsay, and they're going to remember, oh my God, hey, tell me more about what'd you find with those tax papers, right? What else did they have that they were given to you in the van? That's something that they're going to remember you by.
And actually, I have a lot of people when I tell that story that come up to me afterward that like want like more information about it or just want to say, that's crazy, you know, something like that. It gives people not only that memorable aspect where they remember you, but it also gives them something to come talk to you about. Yeah. You know, because maybe they may not necessarily need bookkeeping services, but it's kind of an entry point to have some topic of conversation that they can come up to you and feel comfortable talking about. Yeah. So that's another strategy.
And I think another important thing that we can kind of look over is the presentation is great, but what you're presenting has to be top notch too. Oh yeah. You can have the greatest presentation, but if someone gets to you and you have kind of a negative personality, your presentation doesn't matter. If your business doesn't have good customer service, it doesn't matter how good your presentation is. And so, Lindsay, that's one thing I think you've done well is you've kind of paired the two together where it's, hey, I've got a great presentation. And then when you come in, then you go, oh, this is why the presentation is so great because Kline is awesome. I love working with Lindsay. And so I would say as much as you want to work on your presentation, make sure what you're presenting is quality as well.
I would agree with that completely. If you are just BSing,
yes,
it's probably going to come through. Yeah. Like there's actually been studies shown that people have a good BS radar, right? So if you don't really believe what you're saying, people are going to catch on to that. Yeah. Here's the other thing is confidence is huge. Yep. And I'm sure we've all been through presentations where the person giving the presentation was as nervous. You could see how nervous they were, how just out of place they felt, how unsure of themselves they were. That is automatically going to put your audience in a state of just nerves. Like you feel bad already.
You're uncomfortable, like
you're
watching.
Uncomfortable. Yeah, it's kind of like just watching a train wreck. You're like, oh boy, this is going to be bad, you know? And you can feel it and you feel the discomfort. So there's a lot of tricks out there that, you know, people can find anywhere about how, one trick, if I'm ever getting nervous, is calm your heart rate because your heart will start racing. And if you get in that flight or fight mode, then you're pulling resources from your brain down to other parts of your body, which is not what you want. So calming your heart rate down. And actually studies have shown people that look at aquariums, it actually calms your heart rate. Like there's something calming about an aquarium. So I use this tactic if I'm ever starting to get nervous about something and I feel my heart starting to speed up. I'll just like close my eyes and visualize an aquarium. Just think about, you know, the calming effect of that to get my heart rate back lower. So that's one tactic to use because you want all your resources going into your brain, not anywhere else. Because that's where you get you get stuck, right? You have those moments of, I've done this presentation 10,000 times and right now I'm drawing a complete blank. Yeah. It's probably because right now your brain doesn't have the same resources it had when you practiced because you weren't nervous then. Yeah. So that's one big thing.
That's really good. And for those of you who have a Roku device, when you let it sit for so long, it goes to like aquarium. I love watching it here in the Frito Nation studios. I watched it at my house.
Nice.
My daughter hates it because she knows that if it's on the aquarium, that means, we're not going to watch Baby Shark or something. But you're right. I've just been subconsciously enjoying this for so long. And I think I'm starting to figure out the reason why.
There you go.
Kind of playing along with confidence. And I think this is maybe the last important thing I would say is when you get up there, let's say you're walking up to the front to give your 30 seconds and you trip, or you're up there and you stumble along your words. Don't get flustered. Just own it and play off of it, because that will then become memorable.
Yes.
And people are going to say, man, he took the tripping and he turned it into something funny. And now I remember it.
Yes.
And so anything you can do up there short of, accidentally, I don't know, like letting out a swear word or something, anything, or some kind of disastrous wardrobe malfunction, really, anything that happens that you think is negative, you can spin into something funny. And then when everybody leaves, they're going to go, man, like Kris had the funniest 30 seconds today. And it was something you weren't even intending to do.
Yeah, you can actually turn those moments into something that causes people to like you more.
Yeah.
I mean, we all relate to those moments. We all have them. When you do something embarrassing, everyone can relate to that.
Yeah.
And I think sympathy automatically goes to the person when they're in those situations. Like, oh, if that happened to me, that would be horrible, right? Yeah. So it's not like people feel negatively towards you because you had an embarrassing moment, but your ability to just kind of turn it around into a positive will automatically cause people to like you more.
Yes. Yeah,
so don't see those as a kryptonite. Those are good.
Yeah.
Those moments actually are what make you more authentic. They see you in a vulnerable moment and how you handled that. Yeah. So I think it's good when that stuff happens.
So Lindsay, you are a networking pro. You love networking. You are networking all the time.
Make sure to say that in your next 30-second commercial when you go to that group. All right.
I will. I think I'm just going to, all my 30 seconds from this point forward are just going to be about Lindsay.
Yes.
So with all the networking you do, what do you think is the presentations that people can give that work the best? And what are the people that when maybe they're giving their 30-second commercials, or even if they're just, and maybe this is the way we want to take it, if you're just in a one-on-one with somebody, or there's a couple people around and they're talking about their business, what are the good things that you see from people, and what are the bad things?
So really, I think the thing that hits home the most is when I can relate it to myself, my situation, my business, my life, etc. Right?
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are going to stick with me the most. And that's true for anyone, I think. If they can relate what is being presented to their situation. It's kind of the same as when you're buying a house, right? They say, you should stage it so people can see themselves living there, right? If they walk into an empty house and they can't visualize it, there's no connection there, right? It's kind of the same thing. You're trying to tell people why they need you in their life. That's what's going to hit home. And it may be just something like, I really like this person. I want to spend time with them because they're super cool. It could just be that.
Yeah.
Or it could be, I need this service. I can see how this would greatly benefit me. Whatever the connection is, at the end of the day, if you don't somehow tell that person why they need you in their life, it's going to be lost, right? They're going to walk away and probably never remember you again, you know? So that's, I think, the biggest thing. But people's favorite, like, especially if you're in a one-on-one setting, people's favorite topic is themselves.
Yeah.
And I think, so this is one thing I always keep in mind when I go into a meeting is this person's favorite topic, no matter who they are, is themselves and what they have going on, right? B, if I'm talking, I'm not learning, right? Because I already know everything in my head and I can only pull from what's in my head if I'm doing the talking, right? So that's the second reason why I'm incentivized to do more listening than talking.
Wow. That's
but
really
there's
good.
a lot of people that don't take that strategy. And you will sit there during the whole entire one-on-one meeting and they will talk from start to finish without stopping about themselves and not ask one single question of the other person. We've all been in these meetings.
Yep.
And I'll let them. I'll smile and nod. I'll even take notes. I'll act very interested. But probably not going to build a lifelong connection with that person. Probably not the first person I'm going to be thinking of
when you need that kind of service.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they did not show much interest in finding out what was going on in my world and how that might pertain. Like, there's no link there.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I just, basically what I took from that meeting is you don't have a lot of emotional intelligence. You know, and I especially take that into consideration for people that I'm going to refer to my clients.
Yeah.
I want someone that's going to care and take care of them, not someone that's going to basically talk about themselves the whole time.
Yeah.
So that's something that I especially take into consideration when I'm referring people out. And I think the ones that I enjoy the most are the ones where it's a two-way street, right?
Yep.
They're interested in your life and what's going on with you. It's not just all about, I need to sell to you, right? They're actually genuinely interested in your life and what you have going on. And, you know, how can we help each other? That sort of situation. I much more enjoy those meetings.
Yes. Me too. No one likes the guy who just talks about himself the whole time.
And I'm going to say this too. This is my my PDA, public service announcement, PSA, I guess, PSA, right? Public service announcement to anyone. I don't care if you do networking, but if you're around people at all, breath mints. Breath mints. Keep them with you at all times.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
You know those people that you have to like kind of put your foot out a little bit to make sure they don't get too close and you're kind of pulling back because their breath is so awful. And the ones that you're literally like, okay, when is the quickest exit point in this conversation that I can just get away? People do not realize, and that's, I don't know about you, but if someone has horrible breath, that is all I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
They're talking. I'm not hearing a word. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so bad.
Yeah. That's when you're texting somebody, hey, can you call me? I need to like fake a way out of this conversation.
Yes. And then when it's a situation where you can't break away very quickly, like if it's a lunch or something, that's the worst because you can't get away.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Breath mints.
Man,
breath mints.
That is a power tip.
Yes.
And it's such a small, minute investment.
Yes, exactly.
Watch your breath, people. Watch your breath.
Yes, exactly. That's the number one thing you take away from today. That's good. Breath mints. All right, well, this has been good. Good topic, Kris.
Yeah.
Glad you'd come up with it.
This was good, and I think I've learned a lot, and I hope everybody is now walking into their next one-on-one, their next networking meeting with at least fresh breath.
Yeah, like, at least.
I hope they learned some other stuff, but at least fresh breath.
All right. So if anyone's interested in podcasting, where could they find you guys?
Yes. We make podcasting very easy. You can reach out to us, freedonation.live. You can find out more information about us there, or reach out to me, email Kris, Kris, at freedonation.live.
And as an added bonus, he'll be your co-star too.
Yeah. I'd
like
love to sit
volunteering you to other people.
Yes. But if you're going to sit next to me, you have to have fresh breath. Like that's a requirement from now on.
Yes, that is important. Thank you guys for joining us today. This is Lindsay Kline with Kline, honest, accurate bookkeeping performed on time. You can find us at sakline.com, SAKLINE.com. Phone number in Dallas is 214-396-5020. And we have a San Antonio office now, 210-510-4129. We'd love to help anyone who is interested in getting bookkeeping services, or if you know of anyone, please send them our way. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great week. Until next time, bye-bye.
By the Books is presented by Kline, honest, accurate bookkeeping performed on time. For more information on Kline services, or to get a hold of Lindsay, visit sakline.com or email info@sakline.com.
The information provided on this website and podcast does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all information, content, and materials available are for general information purposes only. Information provided by Kline may not constitute the most up-to-date legal or other information. Listeners should contact their attorney to obtain advice with respect to any particular legal matter and should refrain from acting on the basis of this information without first seeking legal advice from counsel in the relevant jurisdiction. Only your individual attorney can provide assurances that the information contained herein and your interpretation of it is applicable or appropriate to your particular situation.